I was 23 years old when I had my son, RJ. I was in labor for 3 days. 3 days. So, of course, when I first laid eyes on him, I felt nothing but complete exhaustion. And I thought, this is it. It wasn't until about an hour later, when I held him in my arms, that I felt it. I felt that rush of maternal love. I remember when RJ first started high school, he does amazing. He gets all A's, he's in theater, he plays the drums. He's 6 feet tall and impossibly handsome. But in January of his junior year, a cop shows up at the house and says there's been an accident. And that was the day when I had to start fighting for my son's life. When we hear politicians debate about our healthcare system, too often the topic is big corporations and dollar signs. What we neglect to acknowledge is how devastatingly our broken healthcare system has affected so many families, leaving too many wondering if things might have been easier, if only better options were available. Walking with RJ by Stephanie Perullo. It took me about an hour to figure out what had happened. RJ was driving to his best friend's house. He didn't have any drugs or alcohol in his system. He was hit from the side of a blind intersection, and he sustained a traumatic brain injury, or TBI. So after RJ was discharged from the ICU, he was sent to a rehab facility. And shortly after he arrived there, they called me and said that RJ's benefits didn't cover their services. So I went over there and I said, where am I supposed to take him? He's in a coma. And they said, well, there's always foster care. So I took RJ home. I set up a hospital room in his bedroom. He had a peg tube in his stomach, and that was how I would pump in his nutrition. He was in diapers, so whenever he needed to be changed, I would take in a bucket of warm water and a washcloth, and I'd clean up the Speedo zone. I put him in his wheelchair, and his friends would come by every single day after school. RJ had trouble keeping his head up, so the girls took to wearing short skirts and fishnets, and they would walk back and forth in front of RJ's chair, and RJ would lift up his head. Months had passed, and I still couldn't get the insurance summary plan description, so I decided to call a lawyer and explain the situation to him. I called him, and he said, I can help you, but you're gonna have to give me a retainer of at least $30,000. So I said, let me be clear, sir. I'm a single parent. I have paid to set up a hospital room in my son's bedroom. I pay a nurse to come sit with my son so I can go to my job, so I don't lose my job, so I can keep this insurance. I don't have $30,000. And he said, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. At this point, I was completely exhausted. So when RJ turned 18, I made the decision to put him into a nursing home. I found a facility that specialized in patients with TBIs. They didn't have a whole lot of money because all of their patients were on Medicare, but they took really good care of RJ, and he continued to make slow progress. He could do thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. This one time, we were visiting RJ with a group of his friends, and one of them was teasing him, and RJ flicked him off. And I got really excited because that's some manual dexterity going on the right. And then he turned to me, and he put his hand down because brain injury notwithstanding, he was not about to flick off his mother. Before RJ's accident, I had to drag him to church, but afterwards, he loved to go. I would say to him, do you want to go to Mass today? And he would give me a big thumbs up. You could just see how much solace it provided him. In August of 2005, RJ got very sick. He still had his peg tube in his stomach, and it had fallen out. And that happens. When it falls out, you put it back in. But you're supposed to take an X-ray to make sure you have the right spot. Well, RJ's facility, they couldn't afford an X-ray machine, so they guessed. And they guessed wrong. His food had been going into his abdominal cavity, and he had sepsis. So at the hospital, the surgeon pulled me out into the hallway, and she said, I can operate on RJ, and I might save his life. But he'll go into a deep coma, and he will never come out. Or you can let him go. You have to decide. So I went into RJ's room, and he was completely aware of what was going on. And he was afraid. So I said to him, honey, you're very sick, and they can't fix you. So you're going to go to God. But your grandpa's there, and he's going to come find you. And I'll be there soon. And RJ looked at me, and he said, it took RJ 3 days to die. It took him 3 days to come into the world and 3 days to leave it. RJ would be 27 years old today, and I still have that strong maternal love for him. The challenge now is to channel it. Between the time of RJ's accident and his death, he could only say a handful of words. And the word he said most was Mom. And there are times now when I feel RJ, I feel that he is. And whenever I think about that, I know that now it's his turn for his love to carry me